This is every single fight to make after UFC 296, Edwards versus Covington. I have all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now. Some winners, some losers. And you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them. And that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal those opponents one by one as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with Leon Edwards, winner of the main event. Beat Colby Covington 4 rounds to 1. And didn't really take any damage whatsoever for the entirety of the fight. There was some moments where he was getting punched by Covington, but they were more like little arm punches in round 5. And he got caught a couple of times, don't get me wrong, but no damage whatsoever. So I think we should make a reasonably quick turnaround for Leon Edwards and put him against Belal Muhammad. I know, sorry for the jump scare. It's only Belal's face. But he deserves it. He deserves it. He deserves the title shot at welterweight. What else are they going to do? Makhachev's not going to be moving up anytime soon. Dana White said his next fight's at lightweight, and they're talking about him versus Gaethje. And I doubt Leon Edwards is going to wait for that to happen to decide if he wants to take on Makhachev, who's moving up. I don't see Leon Edwards moving up in the middleweight division and getting a title shot there anytime soon. Do not see that happening whatsoever. He's not a star. And even if he was a star, it's kind of a logjam at middleweight as well. They've still got contenders they got to work out there. It's Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. And it's the only way I can possibly think they go with this. They could try and do Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Belal Muhammad in the meantime. But Shavkat's hurt his foot. They could try and do Belal Muhammad versus Kamaru Usman. But Kamaru Usman has lost twice recently to Leon Edwards. Why would they do that quadrilogy when Edwards is up 2-1? And Usman would be coming off 1-fight win streak. Like, it's just... I know Leon doesn't want the Belal fight. He said it very openly that he doesn't feel like Belal's deserved it. I think that's kind of hypocritical because he was the one complaining for so long that he wasn't getting his own title shot when he was going on a similar run at welterweight himself. Let's do Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. There's bad blood. But you know what? I'm not waiting 6 months for this. That's all I know. So get it done. March. Edwards took no damage. March. Latest early May. Latest early May. I know April UFC 300. It's a title fight. It might not go on there. But still. April, May, around that time. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. You could do it in London. You could do it in London. Title fight with Leon Edwards. Title fight with Tom Aspinall in the co-main event or the main event, depending on if they're making it undisputed or not. Who knows? But let's go back to the UK in May. I think that might be the move. Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad 2. Moving on to the loser of the main event. Colby Covington. Despicable behavior from him. I don't like him anymore. You know what I mean? I like Covington. And I liked his fight style. You know what? That's what it always was about Covington. It was like, okay, well, you don't like him. You don't like the way he acts. He's a bit cringy. But damn, he's one of the best in the world. And he throws down every time. Can't even say that. He did nothing for 5 rounds. And in round 5, he like showed what he could have done if he did something. It's like, it was such a pathetic performance from him. Same from Edwards. Like, he won. Edwards won the fight, don't get me wrong. But it's like, you can't do more than 2 extra leg kicks per round. You know what I mean? But Colby Covington, he called out Stephen Thompson. I want him versus Shavkat Rakhmonov, alright? I'm going to be honest with you. After that performance, I feel like you should be getting Shavkat and Shavkat only. But Shavkat's hurt his foot. So I'll say this. Colby is only going to fight Stephen Thompson next. He's not going to fight Shavkat. He's not going to fight the winner of JDM Burns. He's not going to fight the winner of MVP Kevin Holland. He's not going to fight the winner of any of these other matchups. Ian Gary, Jeff Neal. Maybe he'd take on Ian Gary then. But then that leaves Covington out until, what, August? Waiting for a winner of one of these matchups? On the condition that Covington is back in the octagon, latest April, I'll allow the Stephen Thompson fight because it's the only one I know he's going to sign for. I bet you Covington's going to be a diva after this in terms of what fights he's signing for and what people he actually is willing to take on. If it's Stephen Thompson and he wants it, I say, hey, Wonder Boy, we know you just lost to Shavkat. Here's a chance up the rankings again. NMF versus BMF, whatever they want to sell it as. Colby Covington, Stephen Thompson. Make the fight happen, I guess. Make the fight happen. But do it in March or April. I ain't trying to wait another 8 months to see Covington fight. If he's really about it, get back in there in March. You took no damage other than a couple low kicks off Edwards. Get back in there. You're 35. We move on to the co-main event. Alejandro Pantoja won against Brandon Royval. And here's the problem that we have at flyweight right now. I think next is going to be the based chef himself, Manel Kape. I think that's what it's going to be in a rematch. But Manel Kape has got to fight Mateus Nicolau soon, in January. If he wins that one, they might still want to do that Kai Kara France fight in April. UFC 300, get him on there. Then maybe he can be ready for July or August. As much as I never like doing this, unless Amir Albazi beats Brandon Moreno, it might be time to put Pantoja on ice as champion. You know what I mean? He's been active. He fought recently, and he came back here at the end of the year after the Moreno war, which was very good of him. But I think it's time for Alejandro Pantoja. Take 7 months. You know what I mean? Although I never like saying that about a fighter. It's just like, if Albazi beats Moreno, which I don't think he will, but if he does, and it's a 5-rounder, so I really don't think he will. But if Albazi does beat Moreno, do him versus Albazi in July or in June of this year. But if Moreno beats Albazi, I know they're going to try and give Moreno a title shot, but he ain't earned it and he ain't deserved it. So he doesn't deserve a title shot, in which case you put Manel Kape to work. Have him destroy Nicolau, which I know he's going to do in a rematch. He should have won the first fight anyway. He got robbed. Beat Nicolau in January. UFC 300, him versus Kai Kara France on the main card. Massive popularity boom. Smokes Kai Kara France, because I know he will. And then have him fight Pantoja in July or August. Just keep Kape active, because he could save the day if Moreno does end up beating Albazi. We move on. Shavkat Rakhmonov. But if Albazi wins, of course, do him versus Pantoja. Shavkat Rakhmonov won, but he injured himself. Problem. Big problem in the welterweight division, because we got to get things done right now at welterweight. And him injuring himself doesn't help that whatsoever. So I guess we should do Shavkat Rakhmonov when he's healed up versus Kamaru Usman. I can't think of anything else to do. Can't think of anything else. I know they were open to the idea of Kamaru Usman versus Whittaker. Whittaker seems to be going in the direction that he wants Paulo Costa next. I'm sure if Whittaker had a choice between Usman and Costa, he would want Usman. Not in terms of like an easier style matchup type thing, but because I beat Usman, I move up the pound for pound list. You know what I mean? It's a better win to have. But Shavkat Rakhmonov, injured, hurt his foot, probably going to go straight into surgery over the end of the year. Come back maybe around June, July. International Fight Week, main card of the pay-per-view. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kamaru Usman. Jesus Christ. Did I say Kamaru in the first place? I might have said Mo Usman. Either way, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Kamaru Usman is the matchup I want to see. Let's do it in July. Do that in July. Because by then, who knows, Bilal could have beaten Edwards for the belt. Not saying it's going to happen, but it could do. He'd do better than Covington, who did nothing. Bilal Muhammad could beat Edwards by then. And then all of a sudden, Usman's like, oh shit, okay, if I beat Rakhmonov now, I've got a title shot against Bilal Muhammad again. So I think you do Edwards-Bilal as soon as you can, and then maybe book Shavkat versus Usman in July or June, depending on how quick Shavkat can recover. Paddy Pimblett. God, this is going to be a long video. Let's speed through some of these. Paddy Pimblett won against Tony Ferguson. Wasn't the finish that we expected, but he basically would have got it if there was a bit more time in the first round, but Tony Ferguson survived. Good for him. Paddy Pimblett got a win, though. He wanted to fight at UFC 300. It was a week later than he thought it was going to be, because he thought it was going to be the first week of April. It was actually the second week of April, which is right around the time that his twins are being delivered. Not like you had him on Amazon Prime, but, you know, his girlfriend's pregnant. So she's due at, I think, the same day or weekend as UFC 300. So he's not going to be fighting then. He could probably start training camp around then. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be that much around. You know what I mean, mate? So Paddy Pimblett, June, May, whenever the UK card is going to be, do a pay-per-view in the UK. We've got Paddy Pimblett. We can do him versus a ranked opponent. And I think his opponent should be Dan Hooker. I think that's the move. Gamrot's fighting RDA. Fiziev's injured. I don't see them doing Fiziev Pimblett. That sounds like it might be asking for a loss. No offense to Pimblett, of course, but That sounds a bit of a tricky matchup, even if he is coming off an ACL tear. And there's a bunch of other lightweights right now. Jalen Turner, I don't see them making Paddy Pimblett versus Jalen Turner. I see them utilizing Dan Hooker as a name. Dan Hooker's a big name. Everyone knows him. He's been in top-level fights. He's shown that he's not over the hill because he just beat Jalen Turner, which is now aged very, very well since Jalen sparked Bobby Green. So let's do Paddy Pimblett versus Dan Hooker. UK fans are familiar with Dan Hooker, even the same London event where he fought Arnold Allen. He lost that fight, I know, but they still know of him. Paddy Pimblett, Dan Hooker. I think they should do a pay-per-view in the UK with Aspinall on there versus Garn, Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad, Paddy Pimblett versus Dan Hooker. You don't need many other big fights on that card to make it good. You know what I mean? Just a couple more would do. So that's a big fight that I think could happen next. Tony Ferguson. Also, Dan Hooker broke his arm recently, so he'll probably be looking to come around the same time as Paddy Pimblett will. Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson. I haven't even had time to mourn. You know what I mean? Haven't had time to really digest what we witnessed. Another loss. Tony. Tony Ferguson lost to Paddy Pimblett. It's 2023, and Tony Ferguson just lost a fight to Paddy Pimblett. Let's do Tony versus Jim Miller at UFC 300, and then just call it quits for both. Put it in their contract. No extension after this. They could just tell Tony to retire. But he's still got a contract, and Dana didn't say we're going to cut him or anything like that. He just said he should retire. Let's just do Tony Ferguson. Jim Miller's got a fight in January against some random. If he wins that, I don't even know if it's against a random. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check. But he's got a fight in January against someone at lightweight. If he wins it, UFC 300, or if he loses it and doesn't take too much damage, just do Tony Ferguson versus Jim Miller. Legendary fight. Hasn't happened yet in the lightweight division after all the time they've both been in the Division 4. Tony Ferguson, Jim Miller, UFC 300. Let him go out on a win. One of them, at least. Tony will probably lose it and get guillotined, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that's the matchup I want to see at UFC 300. I think that'd be a perfect time to plan a send-off for one of them, like they did with Robbie Lawler, you know? Josh Emmett. Won by brutal KO. Forgot all about it. Jesus. Josh Emmett won by brutal KO over Bryce Mitchell. I wanted to say just do him versus Holloway, but I think Holloway's going to be moving up to lightweight soon. Now that Gamrot is fighting Rafael Dos Anjos, I'm thinking to myself, hang on a second here. What? Are they going to do Oliveira Gaethje too? Or is Gaethje going to get a title shot and Oliveira's looking for an opponent? Or is Oliveira going to get a title shot and Gaethje's looking for an opponent? It leaves one of Gaethje or Oliveira with looking for an opponent. And I don't think they do the win that one of those two versus Arman Tsarukyan. I think they try and coerce Dustin Poirier into taking the Arman Tsarukyan fight. Maybe not. But I was going to do Emmett versus Holloway just because Emmett's highly ranked. But I'm like, do we just need to... We need someone with momentum to fight Holloway. You know what I mean? That would sell. Someone with a bit of momentum. Maybe if Evloev beats Arnold Allen, then they could do that, you know? Josh Emmett. Giga Chikadze. Giga Chikadze injured himself in training camp for this original fight with Josh Emmett. Soon as he's recovered, May, June, next year, whenever it's going to be, let's just rebook that fight between the two of them. And the winner of that can start looking at a Holloway at the top of the division. Cody Garbrandt won against Brian Kelleher. Of course he did. It was a layup for him. But great win. Great KO. Got some hype. UFC 300. He called out Davison Figueiredo. No, you don't deserve it. Called out Davison Figueiredo. Him versus Dominic Cruz, the rematch. Let me tell you why. You need someone that's going to be willing to take on an unranked Garbrandt and welcome him up the rankings potentially, which is going to be rare at bantamweight to find unless you're looking at like a Pedro Munoz rematch for Cody Garbrandt, in which case we're competing over what rematches we want to see. Cody Garbrandt, Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz is a ranked opponent at bantamweight, highly ranked, who will look at a Garbrandt fight and go, I can redeem myself. That's the only way I can see Garbrandt getting a top-ranked opponent next, is by baiting Cruz to say, you got schooled last time by Garbrandt. Who knows when you're going to get a chance to right that wrong. Here's Garbrandt, and he's still looking pretty bad technically. Although he has his power still, He's still not looking the best in the technique department, and his leg was getting chewed up by Kelleher. So if I was Cruz, I'd be like, Garbrandt, you're welcome up the rankings. Here's your opportunity. It's against me in a rematch at UFC 300. Massive stage, massive fights. Cody Garbrandt, Dominic Cruz to the rematch. We move on. Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell. Took a lot of damage. Well, not really. It's not like he got Calvin Cater or Max Holloway, but he got slept badly. Woke back up. You can't come back 5 months. You're talking 5-6 months minimum layoff. So I'm just thinking international fight week, July, Bryce Mitchell, another featherweight coming off a loss, Alex Caceres, fun matchup, fun characters, goofy looking fight probably. Bryce Mitchell versus Alex Caceres on the prelims of international fight week, UFC 303, July. There's all the fights to make. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.